So lithotripsy, how do I describe it? It's shockwave therapy, and there are different versions of it, and it works well if you're a radiographer and you have imaging and you use X-rays, because you use the X-rays to find, say, kidney stones in kidneys, and then you also can use ultrasound to look at the energy, the image of a kidney, and there's so many ways in which you can look at that, because there's so many different controls in an ultrasound system. And also, when you're breaking a stone up, you can see what happens to the kidney, how it almost how it feels, and also how the stone feels when it's being impacted, because it will move around and do some unusual things. So over the last few years, while we've been doing all the NIDAN with Professor, I've been working in the NHS, and I see parallels with so many things that I feel like everything I do is much about the non-invasive, because so much of the stuff in the NHS and the hospitals is invasive. It's like, let's cut in there, let's shove a scope in and see, let's have a look round. But the very idea that you can do things externally but non-invasively is a very nice kind of way to look at things, and I think that's where we can have a connectivity with what we are doing here, but what can happen in the wider circles of healthcare and alternative healthcare, So my little title there, just try to sort of put that. So what is lithotripsy? Well, the contents of what we're going to look at, I want to look a bit more deeply into this lithotripsy. I want to introduce ultrasound and just show a few example images and just talk a little bit about how it works, and hopefully at all times I'm just trying to link, as I say, this non-invasive aspect of things, and to see how we can start to try to interact with healthcare and be part of that, because it should be a very welcome addition to global healthcare. And we can compare and contrast these different sort of, we call them modalities, but anything in imaging is a modality. It could be an X-ray or an ultrasound scan or a CT scan or an MRI scan, anything else. And I'd like to also touch on these developing fields of research. There's some very interesting things going on in imaging, and I've been following these for a good few years, and I see parallels with how some of the projects I'm trying to do myself with these developing fields, which we in London at the moment we have on our doorstep, but our doorstep is also the wider world, because this is all academic and we're all in contact and we all share this kind of information. So let's look at let's talk about the lithotripsy I do. What does lithotripsy mean? Lith is often like meaning stone. Everyone's seen 2001, no doubt. You know what a monolith is, the great big stone. Everyone sort of doesn't know whether they can touch it or not, and tripsy goes back to the word meaning rubbing, and it means sort of, in my mind, it's resonance. It's you could break rocks with resonance without touching, just a process of rubbing. So stones just get oscillated into dust in the body. Nothing needed to touch them. Historically, how these sort of stones were dealt with. I mean, I looked at some paper, and there were some pretty gruesome methods for dealing with kidney stones. Remember, these stones are the worst pain imaginable, and as I understand it, 2 levels above the worst childbirth pain imaginable, and that's reported by women. So, you know, I don't think any of us will fancy that kind of level of pain. But, you know, I mean, I looked up, I think in this paper, it was saying that there was, you know, in India that they would, you know, literally put their whole arm up someone's backside just to try and massage the stone and try and get it out. You know, I don't know, what are you going to do? I mean, if you've got a stone, you've got to get it out, right? If it's blocking, otherwise your kidney's going to give up. The oldest stone in history, apparently 4,800 BC, and it was a bladder stone in an Egyptian mummy, and it had multiple compositions. Normally the stones I get are one composition, like calcium oxalate, the really hard ones, or you can get a uric acid one, which is a really soft one, and just crumble them in your fingers, calcium phosphate, etc. But the stones back there, they seem to have a bit of everything in them. So, or this one that was discovered. So that was interesting. So, and indicates probably what our diets are like these days. So, what's in the food chain. So 40 years ago, during the 80s, really, these sort of non-invasive methods started to be developed, and German company called Dornier that used to make World War II bombers, they developed this machine, and it was also people in the UK, some people that I know that were there at the beginning. And I think this machine was taken up in the US, and it was past the FDA approval, and it looked rather kind of strange, to be honest. It was like a big bath, and look at this picture. There's this bath thing here. This is obviously somebody being layered into there or lowered in. And then there's just this great big spark plug. And you've got imaging here. You've got like X-ray here and an X-ray here. And then it's sort of triangulating, say, a stone and then just zapping it. But it's the targeting was quite primitive. But apparently it was also effective. So who am I to mess with history? And there's a pretty old picture, just to give an idea. So how am I doing for time? How long have I been going?
Yeah, please.
Carry on going.
Yeah.
Everyone's staying awake. So different kinds of things for lithotripsy. There's different medical words. The ones I deal with are renal. That's going to be called uroliasis. Then you get little stones in the pancreas, and the pancreas is obviously a pretty fragile kind of area. If I look at a pancreas on ultrasound, it's quite a tricky thing to look at, really, and it's just quite fatty looking and very light in color. But you can get some stones in there. There's no way that those are easy to get out, But this non-invasive method is a way to sort of deal with that. And then gallbladders, mostly in the NHS, or certainly in my hospital, if you've got a few gallstones in your gallbladder, yes, your gallbladder is just taken away. That's it. There's no question about it. So, but maybe it's better to do a bit more non-invasive stone breaking with that. Then also, there's a different machine that I have, and I'm running a trial at the moment, and it's kind of interesting, really. And it's a machine that you can use on ligaments and tendons, chronic conditions. You've got ligaments. We were talking yesterday. Professor was talking about, when a ligament gets a bit old and starts to die, and it's probably going to get a bit calcified as well, and then it's just game over. It's not going to work very well. But some of this tends to break all that calcification. It stimulates brings more blood flow back to the area, and the body can start to self-heal. And that's the idea. You know, we talk about having hip problems and needing to have a hip injection, a steroid injection in the shoulder, all of this stuff. And it's all just, all it does is, you know, subdue the symptom. It kind of reduces the tissue, but it's not really doing any good, particularly. It's a band-aid. But this sort of stuff encourages blood flow to the area, the white blood cells. As I say to patients, you know, suddenly this area that became inaccessible to your body is suddenly accessible again, and your chronic condition becomes an acute condition, and your little oxygen trucks can arrive with, you know, red blood cells, and the white blood cells are the engineers and the infantry, and they turn up and they start doing their work. So that's the idea with the orthopedic shockwave. And it is also good because it can lead into things like tissue viability, because we've got patients filling up the beds and we can't get them out of these beds because they've got these great big ulcers. I mean, mostly they're going to be more elderly or bed sores, and these things are just not healing up. They don't respond to antibiotics. They're in the bed for a month. But then again, this stuff, the research shows that you have angiogenesis, more blood vessels are being formed, and these things are being sealed, and you know, this is interesting stuff. And then even further forwards, we've got machines that are being developed called neuroliths, and you can put the energy on the skull and start shock waving the brain. And it's shown in recent times, and I'm sorry I don't have all the references for any of this. I'm afraid put that together. So I know that most of these things we should reference. I'm afraid this presentation isn't particularly referenced. Apologies for that. But the neurolith is made by a company called Storz, and you know, you could be seeing a reversal of amyloid plaques and things like that. And I do think that this is a emission of energy in a way, and it's, you know, there's a relationship with the emission of energy that we can do with our own bodies. But that, you know, if you've got one example, which is the industrial version there, and the example where we do it with our bodies, then maybe you can compare those things and mix them together and bring that in and create an open ear into mainstream healthcare. And I'm certainly getting an open ear where I'm working, because we're desperate for new things. You know, there's 2,500 staff in that hospital. It's a 550 bed hospital. We've got people just going off sick all the time. The occupational health team is crying out to come and do this project with me. And again, you know, this is what I mean about having an open ear into what we want to really do for everyone and for ourselves. So I think it's really good. This is what my office, or one of my offices, looks like. This is my litho machine. You got this big reverse C shape here. This is just like a C-arm, just generates an X-ray. You would lift up this thing and the patient would lie here. You pour half a cup of water under their back. They get comfy on this pillow. And then further over here, you can't quite see it really, this little semicircle. This is like this very powerful emission machine, hugely powerful electromagnetic coil. And that just, we focus it. It's almost like you'd imagine a small stone in the person's body. Then you imagine that the person isn't there. It's just a stone in space. And you're trying to, it's a bit like, you know, you used to maybe get a magnifying glass when you were a child and magnify something and try and burn it. This is a little bit like, you know where that point is going to go, and then you've got to, you apply it to the little stone, if that makes any sense. So, and then, you know, you've got the console screens. Look at that. This perhaps just gives an idea of what I meant. So you've got the coil under here, and it's a big water cushion, really. So it used to be in the 80s, it used to be like a big bath. Now it's a water cushion that sits underneath you. And like with ultrasound, everything has to be connected with a coupling media. So a little bit of ultrasound gel or a cup of water, but as long as, you know, water or gel or liquid, I mean, on the therapy head, there's a little bit of oil. And I hope this isn't too much detail, but you know, this is how it sort of works. You see the stone just here. Here's the kidney. Ureters going down to the bladder. This stone's causing trouble. This energy goes here, and there you go. We just break it to dust, and then the bits can be passed. It's a nice. It works well. So that's how the targeting is. So here's a picture of an ultrasound image. The picture's a little bit dark, to be honest. I took the picture straight off the lithotripsy machine. You got this black area, which is where all the filters are in the kidney. Then you got this area, which is the drainage part. This was like a pretty massive stone. You got the crosshairs, and you can see this acoustic shadow below it. So that's when you know you have a stone as opposed to something else. So this is where you know that you can target it. A little bit of a video here. So a bit like that, just in that previous picture where you see this stone, this is the stone where the cursor is. I'm assuming you guys can see my cursor, right?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Very well.
Yeah, and then you have this thing called Doppler in ultrasound. This is the amazing thing. You've got all these different functions. So, you know, you see this. And then what you're seeing is it being hit, but then you're now seeing quite a long way into a treatment, and the stone is getting hit with these lines. But then this is aftershock, and this is like a fragmentation wake. Bits of dust now and fragments as a diminishing destructive cloud that comes away, and you know, and it's, as I say, it's kind of nice to see it working properly. This is just a CT scan of that same kidney, and you could just, this is looking from front to back in a person's torso. Here's the kidney, here's the stone. You know, this is a big stone, 15 millimeters, pretty big stone. It's gonna, as it tries to come out here, it's just gonna block the whole thing, which is what it was doing. And it's called this is in the renal pelvis of the kidney. And just, this is a view looking as if from a slice right through you. And this is, you can see how it's blocking the ureter here. So, this is after I finished the treatment, and now there's a fragments of stone in the bottom of the kidney. And the next screen here, unfortunately, a piece or two pieces have come down to where the bladder is, and I've got a little bit stuck. So unfortunately, this was a case where the patient ended up in the hospital and had to have a little bit of help with the final part. That could have been dealt with my machine, but sometimes the doctors decide they want to do it their way. So a little bit of physics. I don't want to bore you with this, but the shock wave is generated. Let me just move this out of the way. I can't see properly. It's all to do with cavitation. It's like pressure differences. So you get these sort of tails of shock wave that rip open in space, these tiny micro bubbles, and they very rapidly expand to about 1 millimeter, and then very, very violently collapse and send like a needle of a microjet. and that's what hits the target stone. So it's, I don't know, it's like pressure waves, and it's, you know, it'll happen in all these different media, blood, urine, water. The shockwave as it goes through, you just get this sort of acoustic kind of effect. An example I normally give is, if someone can't get it, is if I was you were to hold on to some metal railings and I just start hitting it with a metal bar, you get that vibration. It's not quite the same thing, but you get that feeling of transmission of sort of powerful energy. So the example in nature, and probably it's this mantis shrimp, and we always talked about it in the further past. Very, very interesting little guy, a mantis shrimp. Much like my machine, this guy does some extraordinary thing with its claws, and the cavitation that it generates is so shockingly powerful. It just, I mean, there is nothing that can mess with it. When that shock power comes out of there, the cavitation bubbles, you know, I don't think anything in the ocean is going to take one on, because it's just too powerful. It's concentrated. It will break rock. A lobster showing up thinking he's going to get an easy meal is going to end up with broken claws and a broken skeleton, and he's not going to know what hit him. And again, this is the power. It's non-invasive. It's this guy didn't even touch him. He just snapped his claws together. So it's kind of clever that nature's already thought all of this out for us, and we're just trying to tap back into nature and see if we can take a few clues. So I took some of the physics from a book I have. There is a little bit of a reference there, but anyway, here's a picture just to try to indicate what the acoustic wave, the acoustic bubble looks like, the cavitation bubble. So you see it appears, then it implodes this way. It implodes from the top. The implosion increases, and then it just it's just jetting out of the bottom, and it can hit, say, an acoustic surface like stone. We use a little test block. It's a small block of hard limestone, gypsum type of thing, and you can see that we place the shock wave, you know, a distance from it, but you can see that it's not been touched in any way, but the cavitation is immensely powerful, and it's just blowing out the back of the piece of, you know, this is a piece of rock basically. It's just blowing it out of the back, and so just gives a bit of a graphic example what that looks like. Another way to look at it, this cavitation cloud, you get this sort of erosive effect. I don't know if this shows it very well. It looked good when I looked at it, but it doesn't look so easy to see. I don't know if that shows you a little bit more clearly. That was taken from one of the universities that have done all this research into this sort of stuff. It's you know, it's like it was sort of it was a result of an AI on a supercomputer that figured it out. So this whole cloud is just all these potential points in space that that could be occurring. They probably were all little cavitation bubbles actually all around in a certain area. This is my orthopedic machine. This is the machine, in fact, that could be used on other things like the tissue viability. But I've been using this. You got these blocks, right? All these blocks are for different depths of penetration. So say one of my sonographer friends has had plantar fasciitis in his foot, and he's had it for 15 years, and he's always whinging about it, and he's a keen runner. So I said, well, look, I got this machine, and I said, you're going to come and have a little taste, because I'm sick of your whinging and you need to have a go. So he said, yeah, I'm not going to argue there. I'm coming to try some out. So, but what we did, we ultrasounded his foot first, and we needed to see how deep we needed to go. So his thick piece of heel was about 8 millimeters, and we knew that the plantar fasciitis under it is the problem. So I would use a 10 millimeter block here, and I'll put it in here. I put ultrasound gel underneath in this transducer head, and I put a bit of gel on here, and then we've got these controls here, and we set a frequency, which can be number of shocks per second, dial up the energy, and then we just do the shocks. And maybe I do about 4,000 in about 8 a second. It's about 7 minutes worth, and it's proven very effective. He's had that condition for 15 years, 3 sessions, doesn't have the condition anymore. It's gone away. He's completely gone. So kind of interesting, non-invasive. Again, you know, I think this is where I want to keep trying to tap back in, that, you know, this stuff that we've been talking about in all these lectures, this emission of energy, it's going to be doing the same sort of stuff. It's powerful. I mean, it's it's, you know, it works, and this machine works. So, and I don't see why this is so particularly different to energy coming out of our hands, you know, except that this only goes locally, whereas when we're doing the energy with our hands, perhaps the energy goes everywhere, and it's all about, you know, get your own energy working, so that you know. But I will defer to the professor on that, because I'm still trying to learn this as well. So when I do ultrasound, I'm a general medical sonographer. So I scan abdomens, I scan testes, urinary tract, kidneys, bladder, and then deep veins at the upper leg. We only scan from the knee to the groin. The lower part of the leg, that's all superficial. So if someone says to me, oh, why are you not scanning where the pain is? I would say, well, it's only the deep veins we're interested in, so just scan the upper leg. And if there's any doubt, or we think then the pain is down there, then we scan again in 1 week, and that's that. In that way, we pick up, we'll pick up any clot. So yeah, that's what I do in sonography. So we use different frequencies with sound in the kilohertz range and the megahertz range. Actually, in the therapeutic kind of ultrasound, which you don't really see that so much now, and I tend to be a bit of a placebo, really. It's just a heating effect. I think that was more kilohertz. We're using megahertz, and we use different. We would consider a low frequency to be like 1 megahertz, and then we'd use a curved probe in the abdomen. If you're a huge person, you might need a bit more low frequency to see deeper, or you might come up a bit if you're a bit thinner, or, you know. And then we use very high frequency probes that are like a flathead. That's to look at musculoskeletal stuff, or deep veins or testes. There you go. I don't do any other areas. So that's me. But you know, just with where professor would talk about how this can be dangerous, some of this energy, and you've got to be careful with it. We in the obstetrics field, you know, like developing fetuses and pregnancies, and also with patients you might be scanning somebody's head for some reason, looking at blood vessels, or even just looking at blood vessels in the neck, like carotids. There's this thing called a thermal index, and the heating power of the transducer can be quite significant, and you've got to be careful, because you know you can burn stuff. So tissue can be burnt. So just slightly deviating, that can also happen in the MRI scanners. Especially the more powerful ones. So again, they're trying to work out how to make their scans quicker. So because if you're in the scanner for an hour and a half and you've got these radio frequency detectors, or not detectors, the thing that generates, I mean, I'm not an MRI expert, of course, but you can get burning in those as well. So what am I trying to say? Enormous potential for commonality with non-invasive practices in all of the diagnostics and the therapy that I'm doing, and how to draw these things together a little bit. Just a few pictures of kidneys. We've already looked at some. I've already showed you some, but this might be a kidney I might see. There might be a tiny little stone here. And when these stones are tiny, you can use different energies. There's a whole suite of different energies. So, because we're talking about sound, okay, and there are things like it will send a certain sound at a certain level through the tissue, but it may be that different other sounds can be formed, and we call these like imaging harmonics. So you get these harmonics, and so there are kind of I don't know how to say it really. I mean, there are all these different controls, and they're sound based, and it's a little bit of resonance that we're talking about here. And I think that just like when we saw that video earlier of resonance, maybe birds that are being startled by things that are going on, like an earthquake that can be started because there's this huge buildup of energy somewhere. Well, anyway, we use these sort of subtle little tools of harmonics and timing, time gain controls. I'm probably going a bit too much into what I actually do. I don't know if that's so interesting, really, but I'm just trying to say that when you're looking at different tissues, there are subtleties of controls that you can adjust, which and a whole suite of them that can make this kind of quite sophisticated. So this, for example, is Doppler, where you can see the colors of the blood vessels, and you can put a control on any blood vessel, and you can just measure the speed of the blood in it. And by seeing the speed of the blood, it tells you, and also the direction of the blood, it tells you, is this kidney healthy or not? And it's kind of non-invasive, isn't it? You're kind of just barely touching, and you're seeing all this functional kind of information that's happening just inside there. So so in many ways it's functional imaging. If you have a CT scan, that's not functional imaging, it's structural imaging. You're just going to see a snapshot at that moment of what you might see. And it's a bit like, I'm always fascinated by functional imaging, because I remember a long time ago they talk about, say, the electron microscope, and how you could look at a bit of tissue, but they say what you're really looking at is not really anything that was relevant to how it was when it was alive, because it's been treated with so many chemicals. By the time you look at this image, what you're really looking at. But when you look at this, you're really seeing what you're seeing inside, and you can get functional information. You can see what's happening, what it's doing, how it's managing. I kind of like that. This is a liver, same what I just talked about. You've got a gallbladder here with a big stone in it, with a big shadow coming off it. And you've got a portal vein, a big vein that's relevant and important to the liver. And you can see it's red, which means it's got a healthy flow. And, it's kind of good. So I was just talking about other things that I've found stimulating and have been quite kind of fascinated by. There was this guy in about 15 years ago who developed this type of imaging. He previously was a radiographer. Prior to that, he was just you know, anyone, just someone who wasn't doing anything much with his life. He did radiography. He was fascinated by it. Just decided to do all of the, really advance himself. And what happened to him, he went to this conference, and it was the wrong conference. It was some medical conference, and he went to this conference, and this conference was actually an art conference, and it was all about lasers. And he was looking at these lasers and, you know, thinking, geez, what am I doing here? But as he watched, it gave him some kind of you know, idea of how a transferable idea of what he was trying to work out in his radiography. And long and short of it is, one of these lasers can strike human tissue, and when it hits, what comes back off it is an ultrasound shockwave, and you can pick that up with a transducer, just like I do in an ultrasound. But that, because it was a laser and it's a shockwave, the shockwave coming off the ultrasound wave, I don't know, it's far more detailed. And anyway, he worked on this, and it's called photoacoustic imaging. And it's also been transferred to, the idea of it is, I think also they have something called optogenetics. And this is, I'm not an expert, but as I understand it, something like a laser could touch on, so the molecules of the molecules or the proteins in a cell, and see what they're doing and get information back. Very interesting. I might just quickly show you the website, actually. So it's no, I had it. That doesn't matter. Anyway, the guy was called Professor Mark Lithgow. Let's just get my let's get this back. So next slide. So yeah, my perspective from my individual NHS hospital, it's been interesting, the pandemic. Everything is so kind of under strain that the whole thing has become about, you know, it's all about, you know, well-being. How are you doing? Are you okay? You know, what can we do to help? Is there something you can do? We generated this thing called the Innovation Centre, and it's an open-minded place, and you can say, well, look, I think we could save some money here, or we could do this, or we could do that. And I found that I brought this whole, I mean, someone loaned me this orthopedic machine, but I managed to bring this into the hospital. It's getting well taken up. I'm getting a lot of support and a lot of help. We're quite standalone in the hospital with what we're doing, so it's not widely out there. But you know, this is that you could get some huge cost savings. You could prevent you having surgeries. You may not need any more steroid injections. You can get on with your life. So it's just, I'm just trying to get back to this non-invasive stuff. And also I find there's been far more open-mindedness there. It's, you know, in the past, you know, it's a bit tiresome to just say, you know, there's reps that keep showing up wanting to just get their bit of equipment in and get paid. The pharmaceutical companies just want to be lavishing their drugs everywhere. And actually, more mindset is coming of, you know, we need to get these patients well, we need to get them out of the hospital because there's a whole bunch more coming in. What can we do about this? And, you know, why do we need to shovel drugs down people all of the time? But, you know, is there a bit of give and take here to get a better result? And because we're overloaded, so a lot more injuries are happening. There's people going off and leaving with shoulder injuries and all of it. You know, a couple of blasts of the shockwave, you know, perhaps we can be, you know, in the hospital. There's open-mindedness to, I talk about this stuff when I'm at the hospital, and everyone finds this fascinating. And I'm certainly no expert. I've barely got on with my drilling so far, but I'm trying. But I really think we have something here, and my hospital is being open-minded about this. And I see this like it's like a little allotment. We can start planting some seeds, and we can just plant these seeds, and they're planted already, and you know, it's getting into people, and once it's in there, you know, it's in there. People are interested. It doesn't need to be shut down by the big farmers, you know, the pharmaceuticals, or you know, it can just be, you know, something that can work well for people. So I'm going to do another trial with this tissue viability. I'm going to keep talking to the professor, and we're going to see what we can do. And I think we're going to have a good year. I think I'm pretty much there. I hope this has been a little bit relevant.
Okay, Tom. Yep. Thank you.